Welcome, everybody. Wow, thank you guys all for being on time. Love to see so many people showing up early, on time. It's great to see. So many new faces. Love to see it. Thank you so much. We have a really, really exciting session today. I think this is one that we've been getting requested a lot. There's been this shift happening over this era of AI, of what it looks like to build an efficient content system. We know that there's so much we can do with AI now as it pertains to content, but how do we do it effectively and how do we do it efficiently? And what the meat of today's, we're going to be doing a live build, which is awesome. But the thing I want to run through first is kind of talk about the old way that we build content strategies and what it looks like to build the new way. I'm going to dive into things just so we can get through everything. For those of you who haven't joined a session before, I love to interact with the audience. I love questions. Thank you guys so much. I love the global representation here already. And if you guys want to drop in what role you're in, what position you hold at your company, helps me understand kind of how to tailor this session and make sure that we're doing things that are relevant to you. And the way that this session is going to run, I'm going to talk through a little bit around, kind of the old way of thinking and the new way of thinking, and then we'll get into a live build. But because we're, on kind of short time here and I can't get through everything that I'd love to, I want to paint the picture of what's possible. So essentially, the way we used to build content strategies, for those of you who maybe aren't content people specifically, is we had to allow a lot of time for production. So what that meant is we would have, internal team members writing, maybe SMEs, maybe we outsourced to freelance writers. But that back and forth process, briefing them, giving them the ideas, and getting that content back would take a long time. Therefore, we needed to be more proactive with our strategy and our planning. And so often we were planning 3 months, maybe 6 months out for the content that we wanted to produce. And there was just no better way because that production time took so long. And so we would do a quarterly planning session. We would build all the briefs. We would kind of map out what the next 3 months of content would look like. We would then need to spend, that would take us to week 8. Then we would need to spend, 8 to 15 weeks actually getting that produced. So that looked like kicking off with an agency, coming up with the creative concepts, getting the first drafts delivered, giving feedbacks. That usually took about 3 to 5 cycles. Then there was revision and refinement. Then it had to go through internal approvals. And this took us to week 16 and 20. And the marketing director would have to review, legal and compliance would have to review. We would need executive sign off. We need final edits and formatting. And then it would go into publishing, not only till maybe week 21, if you were lucky. And so this process took a lot of time. And as you can see, that illustrated a full quarter. And so you were always working kind of one quarter in advance, which worked. It was fine, but it really lacked and missed the opportunity for more reactive content creation. And we bucketed 2 things. We had evergreen, right, which this system would fall under, right? What are the brand messagings that we would talk about? What are the things that we would want to, promote as a company? And then the second component was we would allow some room for reactive. So let's say, once or twice a month, we would have a slot for more reactive marketing. But what's so interesting now about AI is we don't have to follow this really long tail planning system anymore. We can now consolidate this entire system down to a month. And if you're a much smaller team, even, just a couple of weeks. And this is because we can now use AI for the heavy component of production. And so where we would look at, planning still is good to do, spend the most amount of time on strategy and planning. Brief development can be almost instantaneous now if you have the right formats. Creative production, again, can take very, very short amount of time. And then we spend more time in revisions and approvals, but that whole process can be consolidated down to 1 month. And so the way that we think about building content systems now are in two parts. So instead of thinking, okay, what do we want to talk about in, the next quarter, you would pull data, you would pull, maybe some voice of customer from sales calls. Maybe you would do some, research or browsing of what's trending. But again, what's trending now might not be, relevant in 3 months. And we can build a system for, oh, sorry, we're getting some comments on screen size. I'll zoom in here. I just want to show the whole thing over you. So we can now build a system, an agent, if you will, that is constantly aggregating this information to be together in one place. And, I call this sources or signals, right? And the idea is that this on a monthly or weekly basis even is pulling recent sales calls. If you're doing webinars or workshops like I'm doing now, other LinkedIn creators, what are they talking about? What's working for them? What's happening in the industry? What's trending? What's the news? This is, for newsjacking. What other YouTube videos are relevant to your industry and your ICP? And then the past performance of content. And what we get is an automatic system that is pulling all of that information into a single source of truth for us on a regular cadence. I'm going to frame everything from a monthly cadence, but just know that at a smaller company, like at our agency, we do this on a weekly basis. So it is very easy to do it more reactively, but I assume most of you guys are from larger companies. And, once you include multiple stakeholders, it's just, you still have to get that human review step. And so if you think about it, we have all of these sources coming from the different places. So maybe sales call, this could be like Gong, Fathom. We have LinkedIn analytics, maybe we have our favorite YouTube creator, or maybe this is like webinars, right? So we have all of these other things that we're already doing. And we may pull them into this sources kind of as a raw input. I'm illustrating this as running every couple of days. And then on that cadence, right? So at the top of the month, we then have another AI agent going through and saying, is this even relevant, right? This is going to pull in a lot of noise. And at a certain point, we're going to have to prioritize and we're going to have to, streamline what those, pieces of content that we should actually produce. So some things to qualify, right? Would it make sense if this is executive social? Would this make sense for, our executive to talk about? Would the ICP get value out of it based off of their pain points and jobs to be done? Is it aligned with our current or potential new spiky point of views? Is this aligned with our, our content pillars, right? Maybe you guys are trying to push a specific narrative, right? Like we want to own, let me get in here. We want to own AI marketing engineer job description, right? So all of these things, they can be goals. It can be all of your like brand material. And it essentially is saying, here's all these raw inputs. Step 2 is this make sense to me? Then we want to start formatting it. And this is essentially the brief stage of saying, what's our version of this? So we take all of these and we take the idea and the essence of it. We run it through a brand filter check. And of course, you can add a human in review step at each one of these. And I highly recommend it, especially as you're dialing it in. But then on this step, what we're saying is, okay, what's our angle? What's our unique perspective? And something that I want to note is a strategic kind of step to add here would say, okay, let's probably do an interview, because what's happening is we're taking all of those ideas, we're filtering it through the brand, and then we're saying, what's our version of this? What's our angle? What's our hook? What format does it need to be in? Is this best as a blog? Is this best as a newsletter? Is this best as a social post? And then from there, we might go, yeah, this is really good, but we want to add our spin to this. We want to add our perspective. because this is where it goes from AI slop that is going to be fluffy and generic to very tailored, specific information that only your company can reference. And this can be an SME interview, or even better, this can be a data source. So this is like proprietary data or unique perspectives that your company holds. But if you say, all right, we have this really good article on X topic, what the best CRMs are, or something even more specific, we go, oh well, our founder or our CTO would have a perfect unique perspective on this. Let's go do a quick 5-minute interview with them to add more of that context and that information to enrich it. And then these go into an idea bank, right? So for this illustration, we're saying this is Notion. And so this whole first part of the system is run fully autonomously by AI agents, right? All of these steps can be running on automatically in the background. And so by the time it goes to create content, you can just open up this idea Notion bank, and there are on-brand, timely, proven content ideas that you can go produce. And based on this create your own version step, you have a full brief. And so if you do nothing else, if you take nothing else away from this session, build this first workflow, this playbook, to never run out of ideas that are grounded in real sales calls, real things that you're talking about, proven and validated from other creators in your industry, information from news and YouTube videos, as well as your past performing content. So it's continuously improving and continuously getting better each week. Now, from the production standpoint, we have another idea, or we have another process. We now have this idea. Again, I'm illustrating this in Notion, where you have this backlog of ideas. And what happens next is you have this other AI agent, or you can do this through a human, go in and determine from the idea bank, what's the idea and what's relevant or important to this post? What are we saying that's unique and different? And what formats does it apply to? Right? Again, is this better for an article? Is this better for a newsletter? Is this better for a Twitter post? Is this executive LinkedIn? Whatever it might be. And then it goes and it filters through all of those again, right? This is another kind of strategic layer. And it puts it through the context of what is our content schedule, right? If it knows that we're publishing 3 articles a week and 1 newsletter a week, it can go and it can pull those ideas and go and schedule them out and place them in the correct position, as well as executive LinkedIn. Again, whatever channels you're trying to publish to, it has the context of what your posting cadence and schedule actually is. That all gets fed into a content calendar. And then you have your human who can literally just go in. If you automate the whole rest of the process, just open the content calendar every week and make some minor adjustments and hit approve, and this automatically goes. And so as you can see, compared to the old system, we could, in theory, run this on a weekly basis or even monthly basis. And what you get is you get hyper-specific, contextually relevant, proven content that is grounded in your past performance and your brand. And this completely flips the idea of how we thought about content strategies before, and allows us to be more reactive and proactive with our content versus just, building something that sits and we produce every 90 days. So let's build a first iteration of this, because it sounds daunting and there's a lot of steps, but you can really get to something that's highly valuable in just a couple of hours. Now I'm going to switch over here and open Claude Cowork, because this is a Claude session. And let me just show you here. Are you guys able to see this? Let me know if we're, okay, cool. I can always make it bigger. So essentially, the way, I hope you guys have used Claude Cowork before. If you haven't, the biggest difference between Claude Cowork and Claude Chat is that is working off of local files on your computer. And so what this allows, and you can push those to GitHub and whatnot, but what this allows is it to automatically create documents on your local computer and use the other connectors. No, we're building this whole thing. The question is, do you create the workflows first in another tool as inputs for Claude Cowork? No, this is building everything in Claude Cowork. You will need a paid tier to use Claude Cowork, but I highly recommend it. You can just do so much more as an output from building in Claude Cowork. And so you can see in here, I can show you how I run my system. Everything runs out of this Catalyst OS. And I'm going to come in here to my workshops and I'm going to open up what we're talking about today. And so now I'm working out of this one specific folder on my computer. And everything, people worry about it having access to too much. It is contained to this specific folder. So it's only going to be working out, only has access to in context of in this folder. The next thing we need to do is make sure that we have access and are connecting to our correct tools. Because as you saw from that diagram where we want to connect to things like our meeting note taker, in that case, we have circle back, which is here. It's actually disconnected. So let me reconnect that quickly. We also need to pull access from our past performing content. And in that case, we use ordinal. And then it also has access to Attio, which is our CRM. It has access to our Gmail, our Google Drive, our Notion, our Slack, right? We have all of these things that it's able to connect to, which allow this system to work. And before I, let's see, choose a different folder. Let me reconnect here for a second. And the only other thing that I have created before this meeting is a single source of truth for our company. So I'll pull it up for you in a second. This is Content Engine, and this is the Self-Improvement Content System. Great. Okay, so this is the folder we're working out of. And the only thing we've created before is a single source of truth. So essentially what I did is I said, we're Catalyst, we're a go-to-market content agency. Create a file that is a single source of truth of everything about our company. And it essentially is like who we are, who we serve, who our ICP is, who are our clients, what are some success stories, right? We just want to give it so much context in this one file so that everything else we do from here on out, it knows and has context of that. And that file just lives in this folder. And so it's going to be pulled in as context in everything we do moving forward. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to tell it what we're trying to build. First, we're going to build that signal aggregate. And I'm going to say, by the way, I use a tool called Whisper Flow. For those of you who don't know, it allows me to speak into my microphone and hold down the function key and it dictates what I'm saying. I speak a lot faster than I type. And so you will see how this kind of comes together. And you'll also kind of hear how I think about building a prompt for this process. I want to create a self-fulfilling content system that gets better on a weekly basis. The first step of this process is to automatically, on a weekly schedule on Monday morning, go and pull from multiple signal sources that will aggregate into a weekly signals list for us of ideas to create content from. I want to pull from my recent sales transcripts and pull voice of customer from Circleback. I want to look at what's been performing well for me over the last 4 weeks on my LinkedIn. I want to see which of my newsletters have the best open rate and click-through rate. And then I also want to look at a few adjacent competitors in the space. You can look at Jacob from relay.app to see what content has been performing well from him recently, to see if there's any ideas that we can take from there as well. I want this to appear every week in my folder so that we can then create content ideas from it on a weekly basis. So all I did is I gave it context of what we were trying to build. And the key component here is like, I'm saying I want this to happen on a weekly basis, and it will know to go and pick up the fact that we're trying to do this as a recurring task, right? So this is what goes from me having to sit down every week and type in the same prompt, or even creating my own skill. It is creating a skill that it will automatically run and trigger. And so we never have to think about it again. It just automatically runs. And this is how we get to truly agentic content production. So you can see here, it's going to figure out what we're trying to do. It's going to make a list of things to do. and then it's going to build instructions for itself. As I let this run, are there any questions from anyone so far? How many are content people in here or marketing people? Looks like we have some head of social marketing, director of inbound marketing. Are you guys focused on more on like social? Or are you focusing more on AEO, AI search? What are you guys working on right now? We'd love to hear. And if there's any founders as well. What it's going to do is going to ask me some additional questions to follow up. What platform actually sends your newsletter? We use Beehive. How much of this do you want to build right now? We're just going to do the signals layer right now. We'll do that next. Jacob from Relay App. What format do you want to share these? Markdown in this folder. Cool. Markdown is your key file here. And Markdown is such an easy to read file. It is all in plain English. It is hardly code. I would not consider it. All right, we got some founders doing social. We've got some AEO people focused on that. We got some product designers looking to work how I can automate marketing content production. Marketing tech, very cool, all very relevant. If you guys have any specific questions, please feel free to ask here. Okay, so this is going through and it is, ask me some follow-up questions just so it has the correct context. You can see it picked up that it wants to use these connectors, ordinal and circleback, and it's going and it's using these MCPs and saying, okay, what do we need to do and what do we need to pull? This is going to take, a few minutes. And while we have, okay, logistic if you're an agency, would you do this per project folder for each client? Yes. The way that I would structure this is have a folder with, some kind of standard structured for each client. And so if I'm going to go and I'm working in client A, I can direct to my folder of client A, and it has all the brand contacts, it has all the data contacts, recommend, preferences, etc. I'm going to skip the newsletter now. I don't have Beehive correctly connected, but you understand how you could do this for essentially anything that you connect, right? I think with content production, everyone sees it as a separate task that they need to produce. The way we think about content is, what are you already doing, right? You're already taking sales calls. You're already interviewing your customers. You're already doing X, Y, and Z thing. Maybe you're shooting videos, maybe you're doing workshops, maybe you're doing webinars, whatever it is. How do we use as much of that as possible to fuel our content system? Okay, cool. We're going to go pull some LinkedIn posts from myself, as well as Jacob. Jacob is a friend of mine, but he always does killer content on LinkedIn. And I'm always looking at his posts like, how are you getting that kind of engagement? So I want to see if I can take some inspiration from maybe his hooks or what the topics are, etc. Let's see. We have another question here. In order to get the best output, you need good and perfect structure in the background of your systems. Perfect is a moving target. So I am not an engineer. I don't have any formal training in systems architecture or anything like that. I'm a marketing guy who just kind of nerds out on this at this point. And so I don't know what perfect structure looks like, if I'm being honest. I mostly rely on Claude to tell me how it needs to organize things, right? We had another question about an agency owner. I would give it that context when you're setting this up and say, hey, I'm an agency owner. I have 10 clients. We run them through X, Y, and Z services. They usually look like this. How would you organize my OS or operating system for my agency to make sure that we're, keeping everything organized and files aren't ending up in random places, right? I just give it context of who I am and what I'm trying to accomplish. And I rely on Claude to give me, what works or best practices. And then every month or every couple weeks, I do sometimes go in and manually say, hey, go look at my file structure and tell me like what's not working and how we can course correct. And so in my mind, it gets better over time. Can you share a specific list of tools for you to connect? That's a little bit challenging for me to do. I would love to be able to do it, but everyone has a different tech stack, right? These are the tools that I use. Circleback is what I record all my meetings in, but there's also Fathom and Gong and granola and all these other tools. So it really just relies on what you use in your current tech stack. If you don't have these things already, again, go do your research. You'll find what you like. I've been a Circle Back loyalist for 3 years. They've kind of always been the underdog, and I like that. But a lot of more people use Fathom and Gong. It's really just kind of what you're using. Para structure for Second Brain. I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. Would love a little bit more context. What are the connectors? So if you come in here to your Claude and you come to connectors and go to add, you can literally just browse all of the connectors they have access to, right? So I would probably start by just coming here and opening connectors and going through and connecting the ones that you have access to, that you use already. Before adding more tech to your tech stack, just come in and say, oh, I use Granola, or oh, I use Dropbox, or whatever it is, and go in and actually just go and connect the ones that you use today. That's definitely the best way to get started with this, because you can see there's hundreds, if not thousands. And so it really is just dependent on what you use on a day basis. What's happening here is it's going through and trying to troubleshoot, right? Because I gave it an end goal. I think this is what a lot of people get wrong with prompting. They try to think through what the steps are they need to run through themselves. Nothing wrong with that, but it's way simpler to tell it what you're trying to accomplish and have it work through that process, right? It's having issues, maybe finding, it looks like it can't find Jacob Bank, but it's going through and finding different profiles to then find the one that's correct, and look, it found it. So like before, if I was like, go find Jacob Bank's profile, it might have returned an error, where this kind of works through the process. This is great for social content, brand content, and newsletters, I would say, and even like videos to be producing. This content system, where it deviates a little bit, is on AI and AI search, right? So if you want to be showing up in search results of what the best, go-to-market content agency is for B2B software, that's what we want to rank for. We handle our content strategy a little bit differently. While I'm waiting this to solve, I'll just kind of jump over and show you guys what that looks like. So we actually have a free audit tool that tells you exactly what AI is saying about you. So you just fill this form out, put in your domain and your estimated revenue. That's just to help us figure out, like, if you're typing best CRMs, showing HubSpot maybe isn't the most important, isn't super helpful. Obviously, they're going to be, dominating search. And so that helps us kind of find more adjacent incumbents. But what's cool about once you run this audit, it actually gives you, a score and a ranking, which is great. But even better, it tells you exactly what you need to do. It gives you a full custom 90-day plan of what to solve, what content to write, what are the offsite articles that you need to get your company ranked on, what technical issues you need to solve. So I highly recommend you guys check it out. It's over on our Got Catalyst website. I'm going to link to it below so you guys can access it. Actually, if you click the URL here, you can go in and run the full audit for your site. It's also kind of just helpful to know what's working and what's not, especially for those who are living, breathing this every day. So take a look. But back to Claude for a second. So it's now gone through this whole process and it's creating the scheduled task. Because we have the first signals, I'm going to show you what actually shows up. And so week of July 6th, it found my highest performing post, the direction of the hook, the format that I did. And it's actually finding, okay, so this is actually the final suggested content ideas. So based off of my top performing post, speaking to why LinkedIn performance has gone down. This is obviously very timely. It's very relevant to LinkedIn. And also I've been talking about executive LinkedIn for the last 3 years. So people kind of know me as that. And it's based off of my past performing content. This is pulling directly from one of my sales calls. So I ran 50 AI buying queries through your category. You appeared in 0 of them. This is to do a giveaway for a free audit. And what's nice is it's framing all of these in the context of who your ICP is. Well-funded companies that rank on Google but are invisible on AI, right? That is the issue that they're experiencing. And that person's role, what their job is to find out if AI recommends them and then what it costs them if not. Another signal is recurring patterns across Will Leaderboards post. So I post AI leaderboards all the time, and it found a high performing hook. And so it's recommending I do another leaderboard because they continue to perform well. And what we're targeting is category challenges and their marketing leads. The jobs to be done is see the gap between their raise and their AI presence. This is from a SaaS call. Will has tried 3 outbound services, freelancers, none have cracked it. This is true. I was talking about this on a real call last week, and it's a real problem. There's a lot of outbound services. So talk about skepticism. And here's what I finally understood. Really great kind of personal story post talking about my authority. And then the editorial calendar is dead. Boom. Exactly what this workshop is about. I talk about this a lot. And so as you can see, it's pulled from all of these sources. And this is just the end product. And it might be helpful to see, kind of what the process was, but you can see all the sources it pulled from. It pulled from the last 4 weeks of sales and prospect transcripts. And these are the themes that came up: invisible in AI, outbound fatigue, skepticism, buyer literacy gap on technical products, pricing packages mismatch, deploy agents from where I already work, internal meta signals, my past performing contents, my highest engagement rates are these, which had the highest reach, what's working and repeatable, right? So it's found all of these signals and these sources every week. And now it's saying these are great ideas for you to produce more content about. Something that it didn't pull from is newsletter competitor set. So what I would want to do is just add more from that. I think it's a really good way. I used to spend hours browsing LinkedIn for good content, but I found myself always pulling inspiration from a few people. So now I can just add their names there and I don't have to waste my time. It's just telling me, it's only surfacing the ones that are super high quality. And now let's look at the construction of this skill. I also want to reflect that I didn't create this at all. I literally one-shotted this and just told it what I wanted to do. And then with a few little feedback posts or feedback inputs, it did this whole thing for me. And so what it is a skill that pulls these sources every week. Again, these sources can be anything that are relevant to you. I am sitting on sales calls and customer calls all the time. I, am constantly posting on LinkedIn. So I want to know if something that I'm doing is working. I want to do more of it. And then I want to know what competitors or content creators that I'm inspired by, what they're doing that's working. It called out that I don't have Connection Newsletter and Beehive, but I want to know, how my posts are performing. Looks like we have a question on sourcing your LinkedIn performance. We use a tool called Ordinal. I believe their URL is tryordinal.com. It works super well. Really, really great founders. So highly recommend them. And they have an MCP, which is awesome. This is phase 1, signal capture only. Phase 2 will be the feedback loop, which we'll build in the next session. And so essentially, I now have this skill that is running automatically. And every week, I will get this document that tells me exactly what I need to write for my next content. And that's it. Super simple. We made that in 15 minutes. And so the next process here is actually producing the content, right? So every week, once I get this document, I want to build another skill that triggers and acts as a senior content strategist that knows our brand positioning and the messaging that we're trying to push and represent, and select from these what the top 5 best posts are that are most likely to get highest engagement and have the highest reach. I like a mix of personal stories, but I like to be a tactical educator. And so I want it to select those and then actually write the post in my voice. You should go and pull my most recent LinkedIn post to understand how I write in the nuance of my writing skill to then produce each of these. And then you can put them in drafts in Ordinal for me. So now I just described the second part of this process. So after that runs, there's one step that runs and pulls all that information. There's another step that once that comes in, it's going to act as a content strategist for me. It's going to say, okay, we like, maybe post 1 is good, post 3 is good, post 4 is good. We're going to skip post 5 and we're going to do post 6, right? I want it to select my 5 posts for the week, and then it's actually going to evaluate those. And it's going to build a scoring grading rubric, and then it's going to go and actually create the post and put them in my scheduling tool. Again, we use Ordinal, and so it's going to schedule it here for my team to review, right at the finish line. And so once this is done in just 30 minutes, we have a pretty dang good content system that is automatically pulling new ideas and coming up with recurring themes and building off of what's working, which honestly, like, most content writers still haven't figured out how to do. And yeah, auto 30 minutes after, 3 tactical educator. See, it's even trying to figure out my posting contents, and we're going to create the 5 drafts now. Cool. So already so many content teams are coming up with ideas that aren't grounded in real things. They're not grounded in real customer calls or customer pain points or what their sales team is talking about. And they're not even looking at their data and metrics. And where I think a lot of people are building like AI dashboards to see performance, which is awesome. But I still think there's a missing component of taking those dashboards into building net new ideas. And so this is automatically doing that for us. And the nice thing is, once we post, right, let's say we follow this system for 4 weeks, 12 weeks, we're going to have a much more dialed in and improved system over that period of time. And I think a lot of people just get so caught up with crafting the first perfect post, and you sit down to write it and you're like, I don't know what the hell to talk about. And this system can, like I said at the beginning, can drive and power so much of your content production, right? This editorial calendar is dead, build the loop instead could be a post. It could be a tweet. It is the entire framework of this 45-minute workshop. It can be a newsletter, right? The idea can be expanded to multiple formats, but it starts with having a good idea. And so we want to create a system that is constantly brainstorming and surfacing new ideas for us to create content around. And then, right, so this is going to draft 5 LinkedIn posts, but we could also ask it to draft a script for a video outline, for a newsletter, etc. We have a question about GDPR. So you have accounts. So if you're using MCP and connectors, you have accounts with all of these companies. And so making sure that they're being compliant is on them, not us, right? They're just giving access to this information. We have paid accounts. And so we're pulling that and using that. So you are, not liable for any GDPR, people not being compliant. Scraping cowork. That's a good question. So the question is, how are we actually pulling LinkedIn data? This is the rule about LinkedIn data. If it is public information, that is the post, the comments, the likes, the comments, the reactions, shares, all of that information is public on LinkedIn. That is totally safe to pull from. Where it gets iffy and what you can't pull is when you start to automate actions on behalf of LinkedIn, right? Actually giving a like, sending a DM, posting something. All of the things where you're taking action as a human are sketchy, and anything that's just public information is totally fine. You can see if you are logged into LinkedIn and you just go to Google and you type in Will Leatherman LinkedIn exec social. Let me share this screen and as well. Share. Right, you can see all of this information is public. So a web page can scrape this. This is an article that I wrote in January 2020, right? This is all public for information to pull. So that is all scrapable and easily accessible. It's not simulating being logged in as someone. I think that's the key that a lot of people overlook. All right, this tool is done. So I'm going to jump back in to Claude Code and wrap this session up. If you have any questions or anything specific to your use case, please let me know. I build all of these sessions around actual feedback I get on these. And so if there's something that I can answer for you, please let me know. No, I would not recommend letting AI leave comments on your behalf. That is a sure way to get flagged. Okay, so now we have this new step that says you're going to ground that idea in the brand. We're going to study Will's voice. We're going to select the 5 strongest ideas. We're going to write all 5 in Will's voice. And then we're going to create drafts, and then we're going to send them to Ordinal, which again is our scheduling tool. But again, make it work for you. And so here are the drafts. These are all really good and grounded in real things that I talked about for people who are on calls all the time. This is such a quick way to never run out of content ideas that improve over time. This one I might actually just paste verbatim. But the key component that I'd recommend, and kind of the next step of this process, is dialing in your tone of voice, right? So building a document in here that is, an actual dialed in way that you speak. So it gets you closer to a final output. Again, with more feedback and, consistently kind of refining that, you can dial that in more and more. It takes a little bit of time, but highly recommend doing it. And so again, if we go back to our folder, this is all, this is showing what's in our folder. So this is what we created today. And it's just a file system. So we created this brand single source of truth. That's what I started with. These are the drafts we created, and these are the weekly signals. And so all that's happening is when Claude runs these, scheduled tasks, it's building this new signals folder or file that it's just reading to then create the drafts one. It's not overly complicated. It's a relatively simple system, but it's so effective and so powerful if you're using it to produce content for yourself, your business, or your company. I know we're at time. Any questions from anyone so far? AJ, what about content engine building for solopreneurs, founders, and creators? It's the same thing. I assume if you're a solopreneur or a founder, you're building something, you have a business you're trying to promote. Or you can do this just for, if you want to build just thought leadership for yourself. Same system applies. How'd you build your writing skill, tone of voice? Yeah, we should absolutely do a session on that. Maybe we do that in a couple of weeks. Would love to see you there. Any tools or templates? Yeah, so at the end of this session, I will send this folder that we created together so you can pull them for yourself. And you can see all the tools and stuff that we're connected to. It will also be written out as a step-by-step guide, as well as you can access all the previous sessions that we've done, which will be included in the email link, as well as the tool to audit your business to see how it's showing up on AI. This has been really helpful. I appreciate seeing all the new faces in here today. We do these every week, most of the time twice a week on different categories. So really thank you for signing up today, and hope to see you guys in future sessions. Have a good rest of your day.